news.
Good evening. Today is of course, the Cape Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis radio show, and my name is Lerato Mashile. Now, tonight we'll be discussing the city's feasibility study into taking over railway management into the metro to provide commuters with a reliable, safe, and affordable train service. Now, joining the mayor tonight is, of course, the mayoral committee member for urban mobility, Mr. Rob Quintus. I hope I'm saying that right.
Perfectly. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, absolutely amazing to be having you, gentlemen, tonight. How are you doing this evening?
Well, very good. Nice to see you again. And we say this every month, but
Yes.
Another month has gone. Can you believe it? This is our 6th show, I think.
Oh, wow.
And
oh
today,
my gosh.
actually,
Whoop, whoop.
is the 18th of May, which means it's exactly 6 months since,
oh my gosh.
since we've been in office. And it's great to have
Hmm.
Rob Quintus, my colleague here from Urban Mobility.
Absolutely amazing. 6 months is very, very short, clearly.
Well, it's actually 10% of our term of office. Can you
I
believe it?
know,
So
but
it's
we're
gone
getting
already.
there. We love it. We absolutely love it. But we also love to hear your thoughts on tonight's conversation. Please do make sure that you send in those WhatsApps on our WhatsApp line on 061 862 1065, or you can SMS on 32158. But please be advised that SMSs are charged at R1. Now, of course, as we do in tradition, Jordan, a tradition we start with is, of course, asking what's been the most significant development over the past months, besides the topic of this evening, aimed at moving the city forward.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be with you again. And good evening to all of the listeners across the city. Lovely to join you. I think appropriately for the fact that it is raining here where we are
Yes.
now in Salt River, we've spent quite a lot of time this month preparing for the normal winter flooding that we get
Yes.
across Cape Town. And that was particularly important this month, given what we saw happening up in the north of the country in Durban and KZN. And so our teams are out there doing a lot of preparatory work, jet blasting some of our stormwater drains and sewage pipes to make sure that they can handle the rainwater that's coming in July and August. We've also spent a lot of time going to talk to residents who are living below the winter flood lines. We've got residents in informal structures who have actually built structures where almost every winter there's going to be a kind of low-level flooding. And so we asking them to make alternative arrangements, warning them of what is coming. Some of them it's the first time that they've lived in those areas, so they don't actually know what's coming. So that's taken a lot of time and effort this month, and I'm really grateful to our crews, mainly from Rob's team, but also from our sewage teams who have been going out day and night to go, and disaster risk management, of course, disaster management teams who have been going out day and night to do this. And then, of course, today I think is a significant milestone. It is our 6-month anniversary in government, and it really is an opportunity to take stock of what really feels like good forward momentum these last 6 months for Cape Town. One feels that Cape Town is on the move again. It is starting to shake off its feathers post-COVID and get back to full flight. And that is really encouraging. And we are making some good progress in the priorities we set for ourselves, one of which we're going to speak about tonight, which I'm excited about. And that's the train system in the city, but in the others as well.
Definitely. But congratulations on the 6 months. 6 months is a very long time, but also very short, judging by the fact that we are here talking about, the new developments. Now, of course, turning to the topic of the evening, a significant announcement on the future of rail in the metro. Now, last month, you announced that the city will be conducting a feasibility study on the viability of managing the railway network in the metro. In addition, the white paper on the national railway policy represents a fundamental shift in transport policy and supports this hope. Please elaborate on that.
So it does get a bit technical. Let's just break it down for people. Everyone knows what the problem is. We don't need to repeat the problem. Trains aren't working, not just in Cape Town, but across South Africa. And so we have a choice. We can either essentially throw up our hands and say, well, this is a really difficult problem to solve, and we'll let someone else try and solve it. But our confidence is so low in the ability of other levels of government to solve it, particularly the national state, that we've gone for the other choice, which is to say we're going to knock on this door and knock down this door, and we're going to try and solve it. So we've been pushing really hard these last 6 months on this, and we had a bit of what can only be described as a breakthrough.
Okay.
We were going to go ahead and do our own tender on a rail devolution. In other words, us taking over a much larger control function in the rail space. We were going to do it ourselves,
Okay.
thinking we were going to get a lot of pushback from the powers that be at a national level. Instead, quite the opposite happened. There was a bit of a policy earthquake in South Africa when actually two national ministers, one wrote to Rob, and then the national transport minister, Fikile Mbalula, had a press conference in which he released this paper, which in government we call it a white paper. Essentially, it's a formal policy position. You put it out on something called a white paper. And he goes and he says, not only does he endorse this,
Okay.
Cape Town's got to do this, rail must be devolved, and he gives us a proper sleepless night by saying it's got to happen by 2026.
Sure.
That was not something that we had expected to hear.
Oh, wow.
And moved up the time schedule quite significantly. But you know what? That is the result of pressure and relentlessness. And that is exactly the kind of policy change that we need to see in South Africa, not just in rail, but in a whole lot of other things: the management of the harbour, management of the police, the management of the electricity grid. So I am excited that this kind of policy shakeup is finally happening in South Africa. It's urgently and badly needed.
Definitely. Now, if you want to be part of this conversation, all you got to do is send in those WhatsApps on our WhatsApp line on 061 862 1065. I'll say that again a bit slower. It's 061 862 1065. Now, let's bring you in, Councillor Quintus. Quintus, yes, there we go. There's a great need for the study based on the decline of the network over the years. Please just elaborate on the current state of the network.
So I don't think I need to repeat what the mayor said in terms of the fact that the network is broken.
Yes.
It's not functional. Some components of it are working and not reliably so either. But overall, the system is broken. So I think it's also important to mention that rail as a mass people mover has the ability in a city like Cape Town to move millions of people every day. So that means millions of people who are now relying on buses and relying on taxis would be able to rely on a cheap and affordable system. So, and that is the case in every developed or developing city in the world. It's nothing. It's not rocket science. It's not new. It's the standard practice globally. And yes, you've got the My City service. It's functional, it's reliable, it's safe and affordable, and there are minibus taxi services and Golden Arrow, and that's absolutely great. But Cape Townians should be spoiled for choice in how they choose to access work and other opportunities. And the fact is that a city this size, which already has, although much of it's dilapidated, a vast network for rail, it's currently not an option to choose the passenger rail choice. So the city's urban rail network actually comprises of 270 kilometers across the city of Cape Town. And there's also about 600 kilometers of single track, which is your passenger rail, and then about 120 kilometers of yard track, which is operated by Transnet. So passenger rail is operated by PRASA, the passenger rail agency of South Africa, and they move people, or supposed to move people. And then Transnet is supposed to be in the business of moving goods to and from market. And overall, there are approximately 119 stations, passenger stations across the city. Of that, very few are actually left standing undamaged or unbroken. There are very, very few, largely on the Southern Line, and even then on the Southern Line, there are some which are completely out of action and will have to be completely re-overhauled in order to be fit for passengers and safe for passengers. I think it's a really sobering thought. I think that in 1995, there were 95 train sets operating in the Cape Town area. By 2019, that had dropped to less than half that, 44 operational train sets running around the Cape Town area. That has even declined further now to where we only have 25 train sets that are functional and able to move people.
Oh, wow.
And this is really why the city has to embark on a feasibility study and why we welcome the white paper on national rail policy, because it allows us to now look at that entire problem, because it is a real problem, and say, how is the city, can we step into that and fix what the people of Cape Town need, which is to have a safe rail system.
Now, if you've just tuned in, we are talking about the city's feasibility study into taking over the rail management in the metro to provide commuters with a reliable, safe, and affordable train service. Now, all you got to do if you have any questions is, of course, send in those WhatsApp questions on 061 862 1065. Now, we actually do have a WhatsApp line that says, and I quote, "Can the mayor please tell us about the scrapping of debt that is currently on the table? What are the conditions attached to it?"
Sure. I'm glad someone's asking about it. I think we have spoken about it before when we did the budget show. We have budgeted 4 billion rand for assistance for people who have built up debt with the city over the years and who are not financially able to make a contribution to paying off that debt. There are some specific conditions that it's not just available to anyone who can afford to pay but hasn't or refuses to. It is for people who are genuinely in financial distress or concerning situations, and they should please make contact with us by just going to a payment office or contacting the city's revenue department online. Because the incredible thing is that there's still about half that amount that is unclaimed, about 2 billion rand.
Oh, wow.
That is still unclaimed, where we've actually budgeted for it. So please do get the message out there that people should make use of that facility.
Oh man, and we have another WhatsApp here that says, "Mr. Mayor," that says, and I quote, "Mr. Mayor, thank you for everything you're doing. When will the CCTV cameras on the crime spots be installed? Thank you so much." That was from Ruwaidia. I hope I'm saying that right. My apologies if I'm not.
Thank you very much for the question, Ruwadia. The city has a huge network of CCTV cameras already, more than 1,000 across the city that are run by us. But in this budget, we have allocated another 60 million rand to CCTV rollout. So every year we are just investing more and more in that network. It's a huge city, obviously, all the way from Atlantis to Somerset West and Gordons Bay and so on. So it's a huge area that has to be covered, but we are putting more resources into expanding that CCTV network every year.
Definitely. Now, of course, coming back to the topic at hand, now the announcement of the feasibility speaks of one of the key pledges you made and as part of the mayoral priority program. Please just elaborate on that.
Sure. Well, one of the lessons that I learned is that you cannot possibly try to do everything in government, even in one government department. And this is the message that I've given to our MACO members as well, is that you cannot try to fix everything. You really can't. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough days in the year. So what you have to do is prioritize. You have to pick a few things that will really move the dial for the society you're trying to serve, for the people you're trying to serve, that will make a difference. And so I went to the city with a list of 7 clear priorities. So I was clear about those from the beginning, was elected on the basis of those, got a strong mandate for them, and have set about energetically focusing our government on those 7 things. And one of them was the expansion of public transport through the My City bus system, which is getting a huge investment in the coming years. And importantly, because, as Rob has just said, as much money as we put into the bus system, you cannot run a city of 5 million people anywhere in the world without a train system.
Definitely.
So that it was always clear to me that had to be a priority. It was also clear to me that there was the soil was fertile for a major policy shakeup because the system was so broken. If we had tried to have this discussion 10 years ago, we wouldn't have got anywhere with trying to shake up the rail management policy, because the system was working a decade ago. But it has suffered such terrible decline under state capture and corruption and mismanagement that it is now in such a position of dilapidation that I could see that the soil was fertile for a policy change. And if we could just push the envelope and push that door open, as I've said. So it was clear that had to be a priority. And the other reason it has to be a priority is for the economy. If you care about poverty, as we do very deeply, and you care about getting people, better chances in life, better access to economic opportunities, better connection with one another, breaking down the legacy of group areas in our city, then you have to have a well-functioning public transport system that is built on the backbone of rail. It is the most important thing you can do for integration in the city. It's the most important thing you can do for economic opportunity in the city. It is such an essential piece of infrastructure. People don't, it's not just about getting on the train in the morning. It is a critical piece of social infrastructure. It has to work. And so if it's not going to work with someone else, it's going to work with us.
Definitely.
And that's the priority.
Definitely. Now, Councillor, before we talk about the nuts and bolts of the feasibility study, the added pressure on the roadwork network in terms of additional maintenance and the associated costs is another impact of the commuters having little choice in the variety of public transport. Please just elaborate on that.
Really, I mentioned earlier how many train sets they were running in 1995, then in 2015, and now. What that means is that there are now more than 500,000, in fact, almost 600,000 passenger trips being taken daily. And not over a month or a week, that's daily. Sure. There are 570,000 passenger trips being made on the roads as opposed to rail over time. This is where we're at now. And that puts a terrific burden, in fact, two burdens on the road network. Number one, the hard infrastructure burden of the actual road surface, with having all those additional vehicles, often heavy vehicles with loaded taxis, carpools, although we do encourage carpooling, it has a wear and tear factor on our roads infrastructure. And that means that in the previous financial year, we had a budget of roughly 670 million rand for roads infrastructure management. But we are aware of those stress and trigger points where roads are not able to stay in the condition they should for the period that they should because of that extra burden of congestion and usership on the roads. That we've now had to look at a funding of 718 million rand. It's a considerable jump in order to keep on top of the road network's infrastructure. Likewise with congestion. Now, congestion is a great source of frustration for people, and also a burden on our environment with carbon emissions. And we are also at the city now having to spend additional funding in order to try and alleviate the congestion caused by the surplus amounts of vehicles that are on the road because of the collapse of rail.
Now we have a WhatsApp question here that says, my next question is not related to railway, but it has to do with the urban mobility. The road is closed between Geordin Mbeki Road due to the sewage spill that the Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis team cleared. Despite the city putting on barriers and motorists having found a way to access the road via Jakes Gerwel Drive, making their own roadway. What plans does the city have regarding this?
This is at Walter Frieden and
yes,
Govan Mbeki.
Thank you so much for that, because I was like, no, it's not working.
Pretty well.
So, okay, let's just Walter Frieden and Govan Mbeki. The city has closed the road, and what's happened? Just repeat it.
It's closed the road, and despite the city putting on barriers, motorists have found a way to access the road via Jakes Gerwel Drive, making their own roadway. What plans does the city have regarding this?
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We can. I'm guessing some extra barriers are needed. That's probably
barriers will probably be the answer there.
Yeah.
Clearly. Now, of course, there's another question that says, can you please also provide details or plans for the railway system to be up and running on the central line, specifically the Mitchell's Plain area?
Okay, so what listeners need to understand clearly about this is we're at the beginning of a journey that is additionally complicated by the fact that on the central line at the moment, there are about 10,000 residents living on the train tracks. So that in itself, separate to the issue of devolving the management of the railways to the local government from the national government, that problem in itself is a difficult one to solve. So we're at the beginning of a journey here that's going to end in that major shakeup that we spoke about. I suspect it's going to end in private concessionaires like you already have in so many other parts of the world, essentially private investors coming in and helping to run the railways with significant government subsidies. There's not a railway in the world that operates without, well, there might be one or two, but very, very seldom, that operate without a state subsidy. And managing that efficiently, with the city playing the proper role of the state as setting the ground rules, applying the regulations, managing the whole system, and licensing. So it is going to be some time, to the listener who's asked this question. Let me get back to the question. It is going to be some time before trains run on the Central Line again. But I can tell you that unless we push this issue and push it hard and continue to push it every day for the next few years, there's no hope of that line ever running again.
Sure.
It's only going to run because we push this issue. So that is our commitment, to keep going.
Definitely. Now, unfortunately, time is of the essence. But, Councillor, I just want to touch on, what specifically will the study determine?
So a complex issue like this will cover a broad range of criterion for us to really get a solid grips around as we approach how to take over the management of the passenger rail service. So amongst those are items such as the focusing on development of an incremental approach, where the city will take over certain transport modes effectively and efficiently into the fully integrated public transport system. That's what we need to do for Cape Town anyway. As the authority for land-based transport, it has been always something very difficult to swallow, that rail is the most pivotal part of that system, is not something that we have control over, whereas we have control over the planning and integration of every other form of land-based transport. We also have to look at whatever mechanisms are available to us here in the city to determine what the implications will be for us as a city, and of course for our ratepayers and our residents, in terms of how are we going to finance this? Where are the finance streams going to be able to come from? What will be able to be leveraged? The mayor mentioned, would it be viable or more feasible to look at a private partnership, concessions of some kind? And then, of course, we had to look at the actual restoration of the physical rail system. That's the tracks. It's the fencing off and securing of all the lines to ensure that that type of vandalism and theft and land invasion that we've seen over and over again through the mismanagement of Praza on those important lines doesn't happen again. We're also going to have to look at recommendations, possibly for national government or provincial government, whichever is applicable, for possible policy amendments around running of rail and the sort of filtering of that mode into the public transport system for Cape Town under the authority of the City of Cape Town. And we also have to really, our consultants form a group of people that come from the rail engineering, rail finance, rail security spaces, and we're relying on them to achieve an objective for us, which is to find the easiest mechanisms that are legal where the city can fulfill its role and take over the management of municipal rail.
Definitely. Now, of course, a couple of WhatsApps have been thanking the fact that the city of Cape Town is taking over that railway, especially given that some are train passengers. As I have a WhatsApp that says, I'm a train passenger and I like the security and policing at the moment. Hopefully this will continue once the trains are fully operational. And I like the fact that you mentioned also the vandalism, because I have a WhatsApp question here. Unfortunately, time is of the essence, but I really do have to say this. Lastly, railway is one of the ways to reduce congestions on the Cape Town roads. What's the Mayco member Quintus message to encourage residents to start using trains, as many have lost hope in the railway system, as well as the fear of getting robbed? Yes. What is your words of wisdom for that?
So where the lines are functional, and I've taken rail many times, both officially and as a weekend passenger to go for a really lovely fish and chips in Kalk Bay. Where the line is working, make a use of it. That has its problems, but ultimately it is a type of transport that we need to see most people moving. It's the mass people mover. Of course, the other options are multi-modes. Transport is important. People access opportunities. My city, where we're operating and we are extending our footprint down the Southeast Corridor all the way through to Mitchells Plain, Vine, Nyanga, Khayelitsha. We'll get there in time to have that cushion effect for alternatives. So even if it's a case of rail is up and running, allow people to have the alternatives. But the trains are seemingly safe, and they are on some lines running to a degree. So we'd like to get Cape used to the idea of catching trains in the near future.
Definitely. Now, of course, Geordin, we will be, of course, we are reaching the conclusion of this evening's show, but please do summarize your vision for prosperous Cape Town.
Sure. Well, I mean, this what we've discussed tonight is central to that, because we want to build a society in Cape Town that shows what our country's capable of, what is possible in South Africa. If you get a few big things right, if you are brave about your policy positions, your policy goals about what local government can do, you can actually build a city that gets people out of poverty over time, that gives people a sense of excitement about the future. Goodness, we don't want to be sad about the future. We want to be excited about the future, and gives people a sense of opportunity, and that this is a great place to raise a family. And so we are going to do everything possible to deliver that kind of city. And that means what you and I have discussed about load shedding, what we discussed tonight about trains, what infrastructure investment, basic services, jobs and economic growth. These are the things that cities should be doing. These should not be extraordinary things. Cape Town should not be seen as some kind of extraordinary city for doing things which every part of South Africa should be doing. But if they are not doing it, then we're not going to wait around. We're going to do those things here. So that is exactly the kind of city we're trying to build.
Definitely. Now, of course, that does, of course, bring us to the end of the show. Thank you so much to, of course, Cape Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis, as well as Mayoral Committee Member for Urban Mobility, Councillor Rob Quintessa. Quintessa, I hope I'm saying that right. Now I've just butchered it now. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I forgive you.
Not as bad as,
First, I know,
not as
right?
bad as you attempted Valsafir.
But thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much to, of course, the listeners as well. Thank you to the listeners at home as well as online. Same time, same place next month, right?
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Hopefully I get the names right now. I'll practice even more.
Good night, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.